Hey everyone, and welcome back to the channel for another deep dive. Tonight's election eve.
Yeah.
And we're going to break down the latest from Fox News Digital on this pretty crazy race between Donald Trump and Kamala Harris.
It is wild.
So think of us as like your personalized news update.
Absolutely.
Cutting through the noise and giving you the need-to-know info before you head to the polls tomorrow.
It's a close one. We're talking a real nail-biter. We've got articles and live updates, and they're all saying the same thing. These campaigns are pulling out all the stops.
So what are they actually doing to win over these last few undecided voters?
Well, it looks like both candidates have. Pennsylvania at the top of their minds. Trump just held this huge rally there yesterday.
Right.
And Harris is going all in with 3 rallies today, including a concert in Philadelphia. Here, there's going to be some big-name celebrities there.
Wow. So are they just trying to, like, out-spectacle each other at this point?
Right. When it's this close, I guess every vote counts, maybe every guitar solo, too.
Huh. But they're not just focused on Pennsylvania, right?
Oh, definitely not. Jill Biden, the first lady. She's campaigning for Harris down in North Carolina today, so clearly they see that as another swing state.
Interesting how the first lady is taking such an active role. Okay, so we've got the on-the-ground campaigning, but what about the early voting numbers? I mean, over 77 million Americans have already voted.
Yeah.
Are those numbers giving us any clues about who's ahead?
It's tough to say for sure. The Trump campaign is saying they're winning the early vote, especially in those battleground states.
Okay.
But then we have Democratic strategist Tom Bonnier. He's pointing out that the early voting in Pennsylvania is looking more Republican and more male compared to 2020.
So that's not very clear, is it? So much for an easy answer.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of interesting developments, we got some pretty big names making endorsements. Joe Rogan actually endorsed Trump.
Wow.
And get this, his reasoning was based on Elon Musk's arguments.
Oh, that's fascinating. Rogan has a huge audience.
Yeah.
Especially among younger men. That's a demographic both campaigns are really trying to win over. And then you've got Roberto Clemente Jr., the son of the baseball legend. He endorsed Trump, too.
It's a little bit of a curveball.
It is.
But it could resonate with some voters.
Yeah.
Especially in Pennsylvania, where his father is such an icon. It's wild to see how endorsements from these unexpected places could actually influence the election.
Absolutely.
But alongside all the campaigning and celebrity cameos, there's been some controversy, too, like Kamala Harris's recent appearance on Saturday Night Live. That sparked a bit of a debate.
Yeah, some are saying it violates the FCC's equal time rule.
Right.
Which basically says that broadcasters have to give equal airtime to all candidates for a particular office.
Okay.
So the question is, does a comedy show like SNL fall under that rule? I don't know. It definitely adds another layer of complexity to this whole thing.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it seems like every election cycle brings up these new questions about how media and politics, how they all intersect. But let's move on to another controversy. Representative Debbie Dingell, she made some headlines when she said that Trump might put political opponents in internment camps.
Oh, wow.
She later defended the statement, but definitely got people talking.
Yeah, I can see why. That statement really, it brings up those anxieties that a lot of people are feeling right now about the future of our democracy. I mean, regardless of whether or not she was exaggerating or if it was a real concern. It just highlights how divided our country is right now.
It's definitely a sobering thought.
Yeah.
And speaking of anxieties, there are also concerns about that New York ballot measure. Critics are saying it could potentially allow illegal immigrants to vote, which, is adding fuel to the fire, to this already heated debate about election integrity.
Yeah, it feels like every election cycle we go through these debates about voting rights and how to make sure things are fair and secure.
Right.
But amidst all this controversy, we do have some experts who are trying to make sense of the numbers and predict what might happen tonight. Journalist Mark Halperin, for instance, he's saying the early voting numbers are not looking good for the Democrats.
Really? I mean, we always hear about the importance of getting out the vote early. So do you think his analysis has some weight to it?
Well, I think early voting trends can give us some clues about, voter enthusiasm and potential outcomes. But we've seen that it's not a foolproof predictor.
Right.
We have to look at the different methodologies and potential biases when we look at those numbers. For example, take Nevada. John Ralston, a news editor over there, he's actually predicting a slim win for Harris.
Yeah.
And he's citing some unusual voting patterns.
So Nevada could be a key state to watch tonight, but it sounds like it might be a long night, maybe even a long week. The Harris campaign has already said that there might be some delays in getting the final election results.
That's not surprising given how close it is. Remember the 2000 election? And that recount in Florida, it could be a nail-biter right down to the wire, with every vote making a difference.
Yeah.
And with so much at stake, it's no wonder we're seeing all this increased security around the country.
Yeah, it's pretty striking to see the security fencing around the White House and Harris's residence in the Capitol. It feels like everyone's bracing themselves for potential unrest.
Yeah, no matter who wins. It's definitely a visual reminder of the heightened tensions and the possibility of protests or even violence.
Right.
And the Secret Service is providing security for both Trump and Harris's election night watch parties.
It really does feel like a movie with all this drama and uncertainty. Okay, so we've got these swing states going crazy and early voting numbers that are hard to interpret, and these interesting endorsements and controversies, and the experts are making predictions that could go either way. It's a lot to process.
It is, and it's really interesting to see how the campaigns are using different tactics to sway voters. Trump is sticking with what he knows, those massive rallies, and focusing on his base. It's a strategy that's worked for him before, and he's hoping to do it again.
Right. It's definitely a style that resonates with his supporters. And Harris, on the other hand, seems to be trying to appeal to a broader coalition, emphasizing unity and inclusivity. Do you think that's a viable strategy in such a polarized landscape?
I mean, it's a tough challenge for sure. She's trying to build bridges between different demographics, reaching out to young voters and women and minority groups, but also trying to win back some of those moderate voters who might be disillusioned with Trump. It's hard to say if it'll work.
Yeah, it feels like we're constantly in this tug of war, between these different visions for the country. And social media definitely isn't helping. It just adds to the noise, makes it even harder to tell what's true and what's not.
It's like the double-edged sword of the digital age, right? We have access to all this information, but it also creates this perfect environment for misinformation.
Exactly. It's like everyone's shouting their opinions. And it's hard to hear anything clearly. That's why we do these deep dives, right? We're trying to cut through all that noise.
Yeah.
And we focus on what really matters.
Absolutely. We're like your guides through this information overload. So while the candidates are busy with their rallies and endorsements, there's also a lot happening behind the scenes. Both campaigns are working on their ground game.
Ground game. What is that, like the political version of capture the flag?
Not quite, but it does involve a lot of strategy. It's all about getting out the vote, making sure their supporters are registered, and that they actually go to the polls. Phone banking, door knocking, mobilizing volunteers. Every vote counts in a race this close.
So it's not just about the speeches and the media appearances. It's about that grassroots effort to connect with voters one-on-one.
Exactly. And while we're all focused on the presidential race, we can't forget about the battle for Congress. Some polls are suggesting that Democrats might be able to flip a couple of those Republican-held House seats.
In
Iowa.
That's a state that's been leaning Republican lately.
Right.
If those seats flip, could that be a sign of like a bigger shift happening?
It could be. Those races might tell us something about the national mood. And speaking of potential shakeups, there's that strike by hundreds of tech staffers at the New York Times, happening right now, just one day before the election.
Wow, talk about timing. I mean, the news cycle is already crazy. And this strike could really impact their ability to report on the results.
It's a good reminder that there's just so much happening behind the scenes, all these factors that we don't even realize that could influence how this election turns out.
It's like this giant web
Yeah.
of events and decisions all happening at once. Okay, so we've talked about swing states and early voting, endorsements, controversies, expert predictions, even the ground game. But what does it all mean for the average person?
That's the important question, right?
Why should they care about all this political drama?
Because it's not just about politics. This election is about their lives. The policies that the next president and Congress put in place, they're going to have a direct impact on people. Their jobs, their health care, their education, their safety. This is about the future of the country.
It's easy to get caught up in all the excitement. But at the end of the day, this is about real people and the choices that are going to shape their lives.
Exactly. And, even though it feels chaotic and divisive right now, we have to remember that this system is in place for a reason. We have a way to choose our leaders. And it might not be perfect, but it's what we've got.
And it's up to all of us to participate in that process.
Yeah.
To make our voices heard, whether that's by voting or volunteering, or engaging in respectful dialogue, or just staying informed.
We all have a role to play.
Absolutely.
In shaping the future of this country.
So as we head into this election, let's remember that we're all in this together. We're all Americans.
We are.
And no matter who wins or loses tomorrow, we have to find a way to move forward together.
I agree.
Because the challenges we're facing are too big.
Yeah.
To be solved by one party or one ideology, we need to come together, listen to each other.
Yeah.
and work toward a better future.
Well,
Okay, I think that's a good place to wrap things up. We've covered a lot today, from those last-minute campaign pushes to the bigger questions about what's next for our country. But this is just a snapshot of what's happening right now. Things are changing constantly. And we'll be back soon with more updates and analysis.
definitely stay tuned.
And in the meantime, take care of yourselves. Stay informed. And don't forget to vote. Your vote is your voice, and it matters now more than ever. Thanks for joining us for this election-even deep dive.